Right, hello here. So this is my trip report real quick. Let's get started. This was not my first time doing this combo, but the difference between the two experiences could not be more stark in contrast. I was 18 at the time, barely into adulthood, and lost in life, having no direction, and it seemed at the time that there was no way out of my situation. So I sat in my mess of a room at my mother's house, falling into a deeper spiral of depression, in which my way of coping was taking any drugs that I could afford or steal if need be. So diphenhydramine was a very common substance that I abused, only using it for adult videos and to numb myself. The more I took, the more over time I started to enjoy the substance in some sort of strange drug Stockholm syndrome. One night I hit up my drug dealer asking if he had any acid. I had $60 on me and well, I didn't have anything better to do. Sadly he didn't, but he did have shrooms. At this point, my experiences with shrooms were largely negative, as it always led me to thinking how my life was going, and the setting of my torn up room did not help with the experiences I had. But it was all he had on him, so I agreed to buy some shrooms from him. I had to wait around an hour, as he didn't have a ride, so he had a longboard to my house. We met up, and I got my drugs. He got his money, and we went separate ways. The night I took around what I believed to be about 2 to 2.5 grams of shrooms. As the trip started to pick up, at first I was having a pretty good time and was drawing on my iPad, feeling great. But as I neared to the peak, I started to get stuck in my head and thinking where my life was even going. I was failing in every way possible, and through my decisions, crashing all my options away in a self destructive fit. I didn't want myself to succeed, I realized, because I hated who I was and some of the actions I've taken as a teenager. So, surprise, my mood was not great, and while sinking deeper and deeper into this trip, I noticed my bottle of Benadryl on the floor and decided to take it, hoping to numb myself or at least focus my thoughts onto physical discomfort instead of emotional. I believe I poured around 500 milligrams of DPH into my hand and took it. I'm not certain the exact amount because of the fact I was tripping pretty fucking hard and was kind of frantic in my actions, trying to get drugs in me as fast as possible to stop the spiral. After taking it immediately, I felt like I fucked up, and I was gonna die. But I didn't call anybody or wake anybody in my house, unable to bring myself to bother anyone, and instead decided to lay in my bed and accept my fate. As the DPH rose, the body discomfort enveloped me, as always, but my mental actually calmed. I started to watch life documentaries, wildlife and stuff, and I remember laying there, appreciating life in all its aspects, good and bad, and coming to peace with what I believed at the time would be my death. I remember some tears coming down my eyes as I remember happier moments from my childhood and no longer regretting the life I lived. It's a highly spiritual moment for me, and I really felt connected to God or the universe or source, whatever you like to call it, and feeling great love from whatever it may be. As the night moved on and the drugs finally started to come down, I realized that I wouldn't be going away today and went to bed. I woke up the next day feeling spiritually rejuvenated, but this wouldn't last too long, and so came the second time I took this combo, which to this day, while not my most intense high, it was the scariest trip of my life and still kind of fucks with me to this day. So, I had about 3.5 grams left, and I believe it was about 2 weeks later when I took it, which is surprising, as my self-control around substances is quite low, as I would usually wait the minimum time required for my tolerance to go down, if even that. So I was relatively alone in my house with everyone being asleep. I pulled out the bag of shrooms and started to choke down what was left in my bag. My dopamine at the time was pretty low due to doing the other drugs the day before, so the trip wasn't all that strong, but it threw me into a negative headspace almost immediately. I toughed through it, but eventually the mental pain started to be too much for me, and remembering what happened last time, I proceeded to make a fucking terrible mistake. I took around 700 to 800 mgs of DPH. I'm not sure the exact number and could even be higher because all I remember is that whole fucking handful and took me almost 10 minutes to swallow all the pink bastards. Again, a feeling of dread this time, even stronger than before, initially washed over me, but I had some hope. Maybe this could save this trip, like the experience from last time. As the time went on and the DPH started to take over, I was becoming physically extremely uncomfortable, having bad chest pain. But what really started to freak me out was the fact that I couldn't feel my face. I tried to watch life documentaries again, but I was able to focus on anything else but how my body felt. And I really thought this was it. And again, I really thought this was it. Jesus. You can tell I'm fried, even when I write. So, surprisingly, this trip didn't have much in the way of visual hallucinations. Sure, I saw some people standing outside my windows and spiders in the corner of my vision, but considering the dosage mixed with shrooms, I assumed that I'd be seeing the most fucked up shit in my life. But that's not what occurred. Instead, another form of hallucinations took over. My least favorite form, tied with tactile hallucinations, auditory hallucinations. The most realistic, loudest auditory hallucinations I've ever heard in my life. At first, I heard my mother screaming in agony, being murdered by her boyfriend. Not an uncommon hallucination for me because of my paranoia, but it was so fucking loud. I remember shivering in my bed, unable to tell if it was real or not, and feeling terrible. How could I be such a bad son that I'm too high right now even to help her? It gets blurry remembering exactly what I was hearing, but I remember her screaming, "No, no, not my eye," and hearing him laugh before screaming, and her crying, "Out my eye, why," and her begging him not to kill my little sister, who was one at the time. Then hearing the baby scream out and my mother's broken sobbing. At that point, high or not, if this was real, motherfucker was gonna die tonight one way or another. Honestly, it's good no one was awake, as I may actually been a real danger to anyone around me at that point, because of the psychosis. I walked out my door for all the audio hallucinations to stop, and checked my mom's room quietly, and they were all peacefully sleeping. I was relieved, but terrified of how real it sounded. I went back and started to just pace back and forth, because I felt like if I stopped moving, I was gonna die, and this was to keep my heart pumping. But as soon as I was back to my room, more auditory hallucinations followed. I remember that the TV downstairs was on because someone left it on, and the sounds I heard from it slowly turned into demonic voices telling me how this was it, and how now I had a eternity to regret my actions. At this point, I was starting to peak, and memories get really blurry from this point forward. It would mix from the screams like thousands of people, the sounds of chains, and my family screaming. I can also vividly remember hearing scratching on the front of my door and seeing a faint glow of orange under my door frame. I was fucking terrified and would do anything I could to throw up the pills, but failing because of the anti-nausea effects of the DPH, and then walking around in circles and trying to get my blood flowing. I felt like an animal panicking in its last moments, and that if I died, I'd be going to hell. Eventually, about 2 to 3 hours later, I forced myself to throw up, and the sense of relief I felt was so potent, I just collapsed on my bed and lay there. Soon the effects started to decrease, and I came down rapidly, and I was just so happy to be alive at that moment. I was a total mess and just exhausted. So in summary, surprise, surprise, DPH mixed with a potent psychedelic is a terrible idea. And if you have a problem with diphenhydramine, make sure you hide it at least if you're going to decide to take shrooms, acid, or really anything that's going to fucking get you high. If you're struggling with this drug, I would suggest therapy and hope things improve for you, as it's usually used as a way of kind of a roundabout self-harm. I don't really know how to end this, but thank you for making it to the end. I'm not going to ask for you to subscribe because I doubt I'll produce more content on here, but I hope you at least enjoyed this video.